Watch more programs like this on cable and stream with PCN Select. Subscribe at PCNTV.com. This program has been paid for by the sponsor and does not reflect the views of PCN.
Good afternoon, and welcome to PHRC Speaks, Fair Housing in the 21st Century. Now, if you've tuned into this program before, you'll note there's a new face, and that's mine. My name is Adrian Garcia, and I'm the Director of Fair Housing and Commercial Property Division at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. Now, I don't mind telling you, I have some big shoes to fill. But thankfully, to get us started on the right track, my guest today will be your former host of PHRC Speaks and Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, Dion Lassiter. Hey, Chad.
Thank you for having me, Adrian. Good afternoon to you and to your viewing audience as well.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for entrusting me with your baby. This was your brainchild. And so I really appreciate it. And I'm not kidding. I have some big shoes to fill.
Well, I just want to say, as I gave birth to this, the reality for me was just hoping and praying that, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission would get a person as astute, but also as dedicated, knowledgeable with a series of expertise centered around fair housing, and in particular, affirmatively furthering the Fair Housing Act and having you on board. For me, the nexus was to hand it off to someone who I admire as well. So, duly noted.
I appreciate that. So let's get into it. Here we are, 2021. And I know that initially you had a vision for this program. Let's talk a little bit about that vision and then reflect on 2020 for me.
Yes, certainly. The genesis of this was, how can we get to the citizens of the Commonwealth and share with them data as it relates to what they need to do in the event that they were faced with a form of unlawful discrimination along the indices of housing. We do a good job oftentimes of getting information that comes to us, people file complaints, and then reacting. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being reactive, but I also think that it's advantageous to be proactive. And so the launch of PHRC Speaks, Fair Housing in the 21st Century, will just run the gamut of everything pertaining to fair housing, the importance of assistant animals, the importance of speaking back to forms of sexual coercion, the challenges around landlord-tenant conflict. And so that was the basis of it. And then to recognize that we don't just operate in a metropolis, right? So even though our Philadelphia regional office sits in the heart of urban context, we also have Harrisburg, Central PA, and certainly we have Western PA. And so it was speaking to that audience so that they knew what, in fact, they could do if faced with a form of housing, discrimination.
Awesome. So you've now been with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission for 38 months. Am I close?
34.
34 months. I've advanced you a couple. So looking back on this last year, on 2020, what do you believe are some of the highlights for PHRC?
Yeah, I would say that some of the highlights was the mere fact that collectively, we were able to keep everyone employed at the PHRC. We've all been teleworking since the month of March. I look at that as a really huge highlight because, when you sit in positions of leadership, you don't want to go to people at any particular point in time, not just the holidays, but at any particular point in time and verbalize to them, we have to, lay you off. You may use sophisticated words like furlough, there's a budget shortfall, the Commonwealth is against at that time, $12 billion budget shortfall, but in essence, you're letting people go. So one of the highlights is that, in addition to that, we were able to add various key level positions, a director of fair housing, commercial property. We weren't just fortunate, we were blessed to actually get you. You've been in a leadership role. Your name resonates throughout the Commonwealth as it relates to fair housing. We lost a director of communications. She retired, and rightfully so, after 27 years to the Commonwealth, 2 years with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, and we were able to replace that We added key positions like, HRR1s, which are our investigators on the compliance side, also on the intake side, on the investigation side. So it was just really great to have that. And we added, an additional complement. We lost our chief counsel, who had a better opportunity after 11 months, former Chief Counsel Morant, and we were able to add Chief Counsel Samuel Rivera all the way from Connecticut. So I look at that as highlights, and we weren't able to lose any momentum as it relates to our No Hate in the State town halls, the way we address all forms of structural and systemic inequality, i.e. racism. We've done a plethora of Zooms, Skypes, WebEx. Technology was our friend. We did over 52 online events that spoke about how to file a complaint, the pandemic of hate, leading and challenging complex times, certainly the PHRC Fair Housing show, and several others. And they were actually done by multiple faces. Even though I am the face of the organization, my leadership is that of shared leadership. And so you actually spearheaded our sexual harassment roundtable, where we had luminaries like Stella Adams, a civil rights icon in the fair housing space, Melanie Teller, a regional director at HUD. We had Angela MacGyver, a fair housing advocate out of the city of Philadelphia, but known throughout the country. And we put people in key positions. So there are a lot of, as you know, and for your viewing audience, there's a lot of jewels in our midst as it relates to staff, and we've highlighted them over the past year. So we kept the commission running, we kept the commission vibrant, we've kept the commission relevant on an international, national, as well as a local level as it pertains to anything that was happening around xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, and unlawful discrimination.
That's excellent. And that kind of leads into my next question. As we are reflecting on 2020, we saw PHRC in different spaces because of events that occurred. And this is all under the umbrella of promoting equal opportunity for all citizens of the Commonwealth. Talk to us a little bit about those efforts.
Yeah, certainly. Most people know PHRC for getting complaints filed to us that run the indice of HUD. We have a HUD initiative. We have an EEOC initiative. So, anything around discrimination in housing, education, employment, public accommodations, commercial property, disability. But also there are other spaces, as you so mentioned, that we're involved in. When Deshaun Jackson unfortunately engaged in a form of anti-Semitism, he's a football player for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles reached out to the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission because we have a track record as it relates to bringing Black and Jewish people together, looking at the historical significance of both groups during the civil rights as a model. And we actually helped the Eagles out with that. Unfortunate situation with anti-Semitism with Rodney Muhammad, who was the former president of the NAACP in Philadelphia, anti-Semitic trope. That's my hometown of Philadelphia. We brought communities together to have a frank conversation about some of the historical challenges among the groups. And then our beloved Secretary of Health, Dr. Levine. Dr. Levine was the victim of all types of forms of transphobia and xenophobia, and PHRC was on the front lines of that, on the front lines of some of the xenophobia and racism directed at the at the Asian American Pacific Islander community. We partner with EEOC, we partner with, the Chinese community, specifically Chinatown in Philadelphia, which serves as an epicenter, and just a plethora of spaces that we're in that we need to be in. I'm also excited that during this pandemic, we were able to partner with the Department of Corrections in a joint effort to train their correctional officers in unconscious bias training. And we received a grant from the Department of Justice, the part that PHRC is going to play. Other things that come to mind, Bloomsburg University, the Philadelphia Inquirer, multiple agencies, entities, and organizations asked us to come and do unconscious bias training. Those were spearheaded by Carl Summerson, our hearing examiner, Heather Roth, who is our regional director in our Harrisburg office, and Tamika Hatcher, who's our educational outreach coordinator, but also a civil rights expert. And so, PHRC was in multiple places. And then lastly, for your viewing audience, you and I were tapped by Governor Wolf to sit on some really high-level committees. I co-chair the Addressing Structural and Systemic Racism in State Government, and then you sit on the subcommittee, whether it's subcommittee or committee, we're both on committees. I don't get into that hierarchical thing, but you sit on a very important committee looking at housing and combating housing discrimination. So you have you and myself, who we have the air of the governor, and then our commissioners were also active. We've just done a lot for the viewing audience, and we've done it on every side of the color line and gender line for humanity.
One of the things that attracted me about coming to join the team, this excellent team at the PHRC, I think was your leadership style, in that there is a school of thought that is the traditional civil rights engagement, and then there's a more modern collaborative style, and you fall somewhere in the middle because you know when to bring the fire, right? But you also know how to build those collaborations. Tell us a little bit about that balance, that balancing act.
Yeah, it's a very unique balancing act. It's challenging at times because I'm 48 years old, but I'm an old soul. When I was 5 years old, my mother, Marilyn Adele Lassiter, and my pastor, Reverend James S. Hall Jr. out of the Triumph Baptist Church in Philadelphia, would always call me an old man, and I was only 5 years old. And so I've always hung with older people. I've always been mentored by older individuals. And even in my family, I'd rather hang out with the older adults and not the first cousins who trended around my age. So I'm very aware and very appreciative of the civil rights generation, but I fall in between the hip hop generation. And so that balancing act is to recognize that though I'm African American, there are issues that happen to all populations. All populations have been marginalized and oppressed. And so I'm concerned about anti-Semitism in the state. I'm concerned about poor whites in rural areas, urban and suburban areas who are faced with any form of discrimination. I'm concerned about what happens to Latinx individuals. And so for me, that balancing act is looking at it, trying to remain race neutral as it relates to, because I'm African American and I see the anthology of police brutality by some white officers towards Black and brown bodies, not to get emotional, even though I lived the body. I lived in the body and I lived in the experience. And so I tried to just combine my leadership style with just wanting to be a servant leader. So yes, I'm the executive director of the PHRC, but I'm a servant leader. Yes, I'm a national expert on race relations, but I'm a servant leader. And so one of the things I wanted to make sure that everybody understood is that the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, though we're in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I envision us being so much broader, right? And so that's why last year, prior to the pandemic, we launched a PHRC Social Justice Global Initiative where we would be working with the Human Relations Commissions in Canada, and Israel, and Africa, and French Guiana, and Haiti. And it's important because we have relationships in all of those places.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, let's take a look a little bit forward. Now we are in 2021, and we look at this new year with renewed hope and optimism, but also with the realization that the only thing that's changed is the number of the year. And so the journey continues. With this renewed focus on fair housing, paint a picture for us of what you would like to see accomplished by the PHRC in the fair housing space.
Well, under your leadership and given the context that we have a bully pulpit, I would like for us to be the bullies in the pulpit as it relates to fair housing advocacy, fair housing outreach, and that outreach is all encompassing as it relates to education. We also are guided and aided by our Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. Our commissioners, in fact, have so much power, so much jurisdiction. They would almost be akin, not almost, they're akin to being judges, right? And so when we know that there are those entities, be it landlords, developers, in the space of gentrification, redlining, all of those things that Ronstein in his book Color of Law, or Doug Massey in his book American Apartheid talked about, that's PHRC. And so I envision us doing more testing all over the state. Testing for your viewing audience is, an African-American couple, they go to a home, they have a great credit score, they're trying to, purchase the home, and they're told that, the home has been sold. interracial couple may be told the same thing as well. But then when a white couple or a white family goes, same credit score, same property, they're shown the property with the possibility of actually purchasing the property. So we know that there are issues as it relates to minorities not knowing the difference between FHA and conventional, because people are not telling them that. Their housing shortage, but housing discrimination, the eviction moratorium. So the pathway forward is us doing testing, getting in communities from a diverse standpoint, and that's where your robust agenda of 360, back to basics, fair housing in Spanish, moving into our Asian American Pacific Islander community. Also, it's not just African Americans. We have Haitian, we have Jamaican, we have Caribbean, we have all forms of our Latin culture and immigrant populations that are also discriminated along the indices of housing. So I see us being major players in the fair housing space, and not just being major players, but having people recognize that, hey, when I come to PHRC and I file a complaint because I've been discriminated against because of housing, they're going to investigate it in a timely fashion. It's going to be high level, but they also see my dignity. They see my humanity. It's not just a form of discrimination, but sometimes what doesn't show up is that aspect of trauma, depression,
Absolutely.
being despondent, being dejected, living in my car. Maybe I go to a house of faith, whether that's a masjid, a church, a synagogue on Sunday, but you had no idea that I was sleeping under a bridge. I just happen to have a shirt and tie on, or, if I'm a female, my children are dressed for church, or I'm in my Sunday best, but I'm not feeling my Sunday best.
Mm-hmm. And so I love all those points. I want to ask you a little bit toward the tail end of 2020, the Trump administration, and not to get political, we're apolitical, but the realities are that the Trump administration did kind of alter, if not strip away, some of the major provisions of affirmatively furthering fair housing. What was your interpretation of that action?
I was very dismayed by it on two levels. I have the identity of being the executive director of the top civil rights enforcing agency in the Commonwealth, but just on a basic fundamental human level, I was dismayed, like most people, that we would be stripping away something that is so essential, the right to have a home, where none of us are home until all of us are home. And so there's freedom in advocating, and you're absolutely right. It's just not targeting the current president who's about to become the outgoing president. It's the mere fact that some of our colleagues within HUD were so afraid to push back against that narrative. And so I think that's the thing that becomes a challenge for me. We should never lose our voice in a democracy that allows us to share our voice. We should never allow policies like what President Trump did in this instance to silence us, to not say it's wrong. For the Secretary of Housing, Ben Carson, to come from similar environments as you, similar environments like me, similar environments of people who are viewing this here on this Sunday, and to not understand that, why would you stand by and allow this eroding of that law and of the tenets and several things that was in there that the president stripped away to occur is also troubling. And it's troubling, and I'll be very frank with you, because he looks like me. And he comes from circumstances like me and multiple others in a very poor area of Detroit. And so we have to always stay vigilant. We have to always keep our voice. And we always have to keep those civil rights tenets of advocating for all people.
In your mind, how do you think, or what role should the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission play in the defining of affirmatively furthering fair housing within the state, just focusing on the state?
I think a pivotal role. We need to be the persons who are out front to give a operational and functional definition. And newsflash for your viewing audience, I'm so very humbled and so very proud that this effort is being led by you. And some of you who are viewing this, or all of you who are viewing this, you may see the banter back and forth between Director Garcia and myself, but it's no placating, it's no ingratiating, it's no displaying with false generosity. There is a true admiration for one another that we have. And so I think, just in my learning experience, when you unpackage the word landlord, and when I heard you say, we need to stop using terms like landlord, I looked at it intellectually, and then on a base level, I said, he's absolutely right. No one should have power over us, and words have meanings. And so PHRC will be the leader in this discussion, but also in the framing of what a definition is. And I think that we have commissioners, we have you, we have me, we have regional office directors, we have regional office staff, and we have housing advocates that can work in collaboration with us to say, this is the operational and functional definition. Let's settle on this operational and functional definition and let it not be in between, betwixt, back and forth. No debate.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and thank you for your comments. And it is a mutual admiration. I want to give you a couple of minutes to impart some words of wisdom as we move forward in this year. Anything that I might have forgotten to ask you that you'd like to share?
No, you didn't forget anything, but I'll just depart by simply saying that 2020 was a burdensome and troublesome year, but it also was a year in which it was a teachable moment on multiple levels. A number of us have lost friends and family members to COVID-19. A lot of people in the Commonwealth, not just a lot, don't want to minimize it, thousands upon thousands had to apply for unemployment and things of that nature. I'm not pessimistic. I'm not optimistic. I'm a prisoner of hope. The hope is that 2021, people who are viewing this and throughout the state, you need to know that you can trust the integrity, the work product of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. We're ethical individuals. We're not without our faults. We're not without, our own fragility. But the thing about it is every single person who works at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission is dedicated to our mission, dedicated to the laws, want to make sure that we bring about recourse under the law for all those who walk into our doors. Thankful for all of the staff, the commissioners, thankful for you citizens who trust us. And let's look forward to, tearing down these walls of separation, segregation, and all forms of unlawful discrimination in 2021 in the same manner that we did in 2020, with law, with truth, with love, and ultimately with kindness.
That's an excellent point, and it's absolutely true. We have to kind of look at the humanity, and that's the one message that you always bring home, is that we're all human beings and we must know how to relate to each other. And a lot of what's going on with discrimination is out of ignorance or out of traditional ignorance or systemic ignorance. But in either case, we need to come back to the realization that we're all human beings. So Chad, thank you so much for participating in this, my first edition of PHRC Speaks, Fair Housing in the 21st Century. And I'm going to go ahead and have some parting thoughts for you, the listening audience. It's a tricky environment when we're dealing in fair housing. For you landlords, you are at an immense disadvantage. Many of you maybe inherited properties, and many of you just bought properties to invest. But there was no one there to let you know all the rules and regulations associated with that. When you ended up buying a property and becoming a property owner, you have gotten into the people business. You have gotten into the human relations business. You've entered into affirmatively furthering fair housing. Congratulations, by the way. But you also need some help. And so know that we are here to help as well. We have people that do the enforcement, do the investigation. We have people that do education. We have people that are there just to answer the phone if you have a question on a service animal issue. Don't be afraid to reach out. Also, for those of you that may have experienced discrimination in housing and employment or in public accommodation, reach out to us at www.phrc.gov, and you will be able to file a complaint if that is your wish, or just give us a call. So thank you for being with us here on PHRC Speaks, Fair Housing in the 21st Century, and we'll see you next time. And until then, take care, be good, and be fair to each other. Thank you.
This program has been paid for by the sponsor and does not reflect the views of PCN. To get your program on PCN Fusion and for more information, contact info@pcntv.com.